I think for Renault, definitely, especially if they find themselves locked into a competitive disadvantage in Formula One. It's certainly feasible. I can't see them living with that indefinitely.
No, I can't. Although still there are rumours at the moment that they may actually go one step further and do what they did before and buy a team and go into business in their own right. A la Mercedes. They could go to the WEC.
But there's long been
but the other thing that strikes me about the WEC though, it's improving, it's coming on leaps and bounds, but it's a little bit like IndyCars in the sense that there is, in IndyCars there is the Indianapolis 500 and then nothing else really matters. It's a little bit like that with sports cars, isn't it? It's still Le Mans and then, the others are okay.
But it's long been an attractive thing, and a threat to Formula One in terms of manufacturer involvement.
For sure. Absolutely.
Back in the 90s, I'm pretty sure they went to a lot of trouble to make sure that it didn't become more popular than it was.
No, that's true.
So it's definitely a threat F1 faces, I would say, in terms of keeping manufacturers involved. Be better if Ferrari and McLaren had more rivals that had a secure future as independent teams than looking to have eggs in the basket in fewer baskets. I don't think that's a very healthy direction for the sport to be going, to have fewer owners.
No, I would agree with that. Situation in the States in both NASCAR and IndyCar racing is that essentially, the bulk of the teams belong to a very few owners, and I don't necessarily think that. In IndyCar racing particularly, that's come about because it's we've got to have some cars somewhere. So okay, I'll run a third car. Okay, I'll run a fourth car.
Yeah, it makes the whole thing very vulnerable.
It absolutely does. I take the point about Red Bull and Toro Rosso, but certainly gives you, it certainly gives you some clout if you're the team owner if you own 4 cars out of 20, you are going to have a certain amount of influence where it counts. But Toro Rosso now really is essentially just like a sort of, junior school for Red Bull, isn't it? As Jean-Eric Verne can tell you.
It's an interesting point because in terms of if you equate it to soccer, the team's getting promoted and the other team's getting relegated. But it would need to be funded and paid for centrally by F1 itself, and it's not geared up to do that sort of initiative. But it's a long way down the list of priorities of things that need to be attended to. But it's still a valid point, I'd say.
Yeah, it is a valid point. It's actually a hell of a good idea, and it would certainly give more impact to GP2 and the championship. And if you won the championship, you knew you were going to be in F1 next year. Boy, that's quite something. But it would be, as these things always are, I imagine, immensely complicated. And well, who pays it? Mm-hmm. And where is he going to have this drive? And it's a very good idea in principle, but probably not very workable, I'm afraid.
I've never been, so I'm looking forward to it. I guess you have.
I have, yeah. I mean, many times, and it was it was one of those places. There was good and bad about it. It was almost a little bit like being in the Rio days in Brazil. There were always concerns about the food and I mean
Facilities.
facilities. Well, the facilities in the old days were, they lacked a little, and there's no doubt about it. I mean, Sid Watkins was always very busy in Mexico, but. On that said, what I loved about it was being at the track, because the track was a very good circuit in those days, and it's an awful shame now that Peraltano has gone, because that was somewhere to go and watch it.
Yeah.
But that really was. But what's guaranteed is that the atmosphere will be fantastic, because Mexico is one of those places. It's like Interlagos, or dare I say it, Monza in the old days. When the sort of fanaticism of the locals comes through, and in Mexico they are fanatical about racing.
You weren't there, were you, when the Grand Prix was held through the Sea of Humanity, where the spectators were sat at the side?
No, I wasn't actually. That was the year before I started. But yeah, I mean, that was extraordinary, wasn't it? Yeah. The spectators were indeed at the track sides, and the police implored them to get back, and they fired rifles and moved in with dogs and all the rest of it.
Jackie Stewart hit a dog, didn't he?
He did, yeah.
In the race.
He did.
Reason for retirement, hit
He
dog.
did. But they just sat there at the trackside and they were not budging. And in the end, everybody said, well, if we don't have a race, there'll be a riot.
There'll be a riot.
So we'll just have to have a race and hope for the best.
And some were more gung ho on how they approached than others, weren't they? I remember.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
and I know
Regazzoni was well up for a race regardless.
Regazzoni was absolutely up for a race, and in fact, and as memory serves, I seem to think Clay was actually sent round as a kind of frightener before the race started, sort of put people into people's minds. Is this actually Brenda's sitting here isn't quite as good an idea as we thought. But no, they started the race with the people sitting there, and mercifully they got through without anybody going off.
Yeah.
But no, it'll be a big event. My only concern actually is that I wonder if to some degree it might hurt Texas.
Yeah,
because so many Mexicans the last 3 years have gone to Texas because they don't have their own race. Now they have their own race, and it's 1 week later, so that could have some impact on that.
And I hear that even though they get good numbers, through all 3 days, that they still don't turn much of a buck on it.
No,
that's not their fault. That's the business model again.
The system.
Yeah,
it's true.